New driver aids, a few extra horses under the bonnet, new infotainment system. Sounds like a facelift, doesn't it? Well, it's not. This is the new 7th generation BMW 3 Series. Before we get to the big changes, take a look at the car and tell me if you can see any real differences. It took me a while to realize this is definitely the new generation, although several F33 series drivers stared at the G20 as if this was Heidi Klum. I'm sure there are German supermodels born after 1990, but I don't seem to know any. Anyway, having studied the F30 and G20 pictures, I noticed the new generation has a bonnet ending slightly higher, less slanted. Also, the front overhang seems shorter, at least to the eye, and there's a bit more space between the front wheel and the doors. From the side, gone is the muscular shoulder line, or whatever BMW like to call it. Instead, there is a crease on the bottom originating from what looks like air outlets, which first appear in the F34 Gran Turismo and which were fake in the G15 8 Series. Behind the rear doors, there is a plastic element which extends them optically. As a result, the designers pulled the roofline a bit further back. Also, the boot lid now falls towards the back but ends in a perky spoiler. But there is more to the new 3 Series than just optical changes. The 7th generation is 7.5 centimeters longer than the 6th. It's also 1.5 centimeters wider and the wheelbase is over 4 centimeters longer. So, is there any more legroom in the back? Apparently, there is 11 millimeters more. So it's still quite cramped back here. However, I can charge 2 devices from these USB-C ports. Middle part of the backrest folds so you can carry not only 2 passengers in the back, but also some skis. Unfortunately, in order to fold the rest of the backrest, you have to go to the boot. Okay, so we open the boot electrically, which is an option, and excellent, there are levers to fold the backrests, but the backrests are not spring-loaded. So, what do I need to do? I need to go back and fold them. Is this a BMW or a Mazda 6? There is one shopping bag hook here and a 12-volt socket as well. There are also 2 cubbies on the sides, which are quite useful. The boot still has 480 liters volume, but this time it's in one piece rather than with underfloor storage like it was in the previous generation. This time there is no underfloor storage, but there is a substantial load lip and the boot opening is not very big. It's not as small as an Alfa Romeo Giulia, but be careful with your suitcases so you don't scratch the bumper. The biggest changes are visible in the front of the cabin, where we get virtual cockpit, live cockpit in BMW parlance, and a new display with the BMW operating system 7.0. I talk in length about the live cockpit experience in my BMW X5 review, which you can watch later clicking the link in the description below or in the upper right corner of the screen. Long story short, you can customize your home screen and several other screens to display whatever widgets you want. Depending on the infotainment system version and the market, you may get features like voice commands. Still no Android Auto though. You can also configure the virtual dials, although not as much as the center display. Certain things always have to be visible, but some can be shown or not, depending on the driver's preferences. For example, I like to see the map and the trip computer. Navigation directions also appear on the head-up display, which is now even larger. I know some people don't like HUDs. I love them, especially when I get clear lane directions. Also, BMW refreshed the center console, which contains buttons, which you probably know by now if you've driven BMWs in the last couple of years, and there is the iDrive wheel to control what's going on the touchscreen, because this is a touchscreen and this is a control wheel, so you have 2 ways of controlling it, but otherwise
nothing to see here. Let's go.
This is a 330i. This no longer means a 3-liter inline 6, but a 2-liter inline 4 with a twin-scroll turbocharger. Twin-scroll solves the problem of uneven exhaust gas flow. At the same time, it is smaller and lighter than two turbos. Current BMW 330i has 258 horsepower and 400 Nm of torque. This is just 6 horsepower more than the previous generation, but 50 Nm more. 2 generations ago, 330i with an inline 6 had between 258 and 272 horsepower, but only between 300 and 320 Nm. Sure, G20 is much larger than the E90, but they both weigh around 1500 kilograms. Depending on the engine and spec, 7th generation is up to 50 kilograms lighter than the 6th.
So we have similar power and weight, but the engine is more flexible. It takes the 330i just 5.8 seconds to get from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, but more importantly, the car is eager to accelerate almost at any speed. So I'm doing a speed and I can do more. Oh yes. Let's slow down to something a bit more reasonable. Now, when I'm not doing speeds like that and when I'm not accelerating like that, this car can also be very economical. Now, I did a 700-kilometer road trip over the last weekend, 350 one way, 350 the other way, and I averaged around 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers, which would be 37 mpg Imperial. Now, it was driving on a motorway with the cruise control set to 130 kilometers per hour, 10 below the legal speed on motorways in Poland. We can drive 140, which makes our motorways the fastest after Germany, where you have the sort of unrestricted bits, but never mind. Anyway, my best result on the other day, on the second day, was 6.1, which is 46 mpg Imperial, and the difference is probably caused by strong winds during these days. So one day I could have been driving with the headwind and the other one, well, with crosswind or something. Anyway, according to WLTP, this car, the 330i, should do 6 liters per 100 kilometers combined and 7 liters in the city, which will not happen. I would conservatively say 9 to 10 in the city if you drive it like Miss Daisy. Well, not you drive Miss... This is not Mrs. Daisy. This is... You know what I mean.
And how is the new BMW 3 Series to drive? Here I need to go back to my F31 review where I mentioned steering vagueness around the central position. There is a lot of chatter about this lightness and lack of feel on BMW forums. Unofficial sources suggest BMW knows about the problem and it goes beyond previous generation 3 Series.
Anyway, in this car the steering is like it should be in a BMW. It's quick, it's precise, it's well weighed. When I turn the wheel, I feel I'm driving a sports sedan, not a kart for a rep at the start of his career.
This test car is an M Sport version, which includes, among others, Sport gearbox, Adaptive Sport M suspension, Sport brakes, and Adaptive Sport M steering. We discussed the steering earlier, so let's talk gearbox. It shifts gears very quickly and at the right moment. Even if I'm in Eco Pro mode, I never had the situation, which sometimes happens in other cars, when I press the gas pedal and I have to wait ages for the computer to decide it may be time to downshift. BMW knows the accelerator means go now.
Adaptive M Sport suspension adapts, as the name would suggest, to the driving style and road conditions. It can also use data from sat-nav to prepare for a turn. Well, that's the theory. In real life, most of the time suspension evens out bumps nicely. However, as the surface gets rougher, you can hear this unpleasant thumping from the suspension, which is typical for adaptive dampers. Best test drive normal and M Sport suspension cars before you decide which one is better suited to your needs. And don't forget to test drive this car on some twisty roads. BMW 3 Series can be really rewarding. Of course it's really rewarding. It's a sports sedan. It's always been, except for the previous generation, which wasn't. But never mind. As you take the corners, and you may take them with a bit too much zeal, let's say, you will feel the rear axle just work with you slightly, just like twist out of it. It's like you're driving an MX-5, or maybe it's like you're eating a chocolate mousse and at the same time you're being slightly tickled with a feather behind your ear, and it's just it's rapture and joy, and oh, I would like some chocolate mousse now. Skip the feather and celery and whatever. And should something jump in front of the car, the brakes bite from the very top. It's exactly the opposite of how brakes worked in the 2 Series a few years back. Over there, the pedal just fell deep down and then braking started. Here, from the top. Now, you can call people like me grouches because I get to drive expensive cars and then complain about them. But thanks to complaints from the media and later also from the clients, some car manufacturers can learn lessons and improve their product. And BMW is one of those manufacturers.
What else? Visibility is good, sound insulation is good. There is a bit of sporty exhaust sound when you start the car, and then the sound composer does its thing inside, but outside there's not much to hear. And since this is a new BMW, it has some new driver aids. This test car not only warns about cars in the blind spot, but also tries to prevent me from cutting in. I've seen this before in the Audi A6. There is also a system which helps you drive in traffic. The car will not only stop, but also get moving on its own within 30 seconds from stopping. It observes not just the car directly in front, but also the one further in front. That's why the radar is mounted so low.
Active lane assist is a bit too aggressive for my liking, but adaptive cruise control works like it should. This means when I turn on the indicator, the car will delay braking before the car in front, and this means I won't be changing lanes while braking, which would block the people going on the fast lane, like it happens with Mazda 6.
There is also a system to assist reversing. BMW remembers the last 50 meters when the car drives below 36 km per hour. It can reverse along the same route. It's useful when you end up in a narrow cul-de-sac, although I guess if you drive a car, you should be able to maneuver on your own. BMW 3 Series prices start at around €38,000 for a 2-liter diesel. The least powerful diesels can be had with manual gearboxes. Besides the diesel and the petrol, there is also going to be a PHEV version soon. The 330i I tested for you here starts at €44,750. With options, this test car costs around €66,000.
A couple of months ago, I said Volvo V60 is currently my favorite car in this segment. Before, of course, driving the new 3 Series. Having spent some time with the new BMW 3 Series, it is my pleasure to report BMW fixed what it broke in the previous generation and made some incremental changes, which just put a smile on my face, and I don't get bored driving this Beamer. And there aren't many cars like that throughout the year, so this is an achievement. And how do you like the new BMW 3 Series? Ready to trade in your F30? Or maybe you're an Audi or a Mercedes person? Let me know in the comment section below. Press that bell icon to get notifications every time I post. New reviews every Friday. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.